The National Museum of Iran has opened its doors to display a collection of historical artifacts recently repatriated from the United Kingdom and France. These cultural treasures came home following a long-running legal battle to reclaim stolen objects made by Iranian artisans throughout history. Among the artifacts on display are rare archaeological antiques dating back to times many countries in the world had yet to come into existence. Visitors can travel back in time to the dawn of civilization and marvel over the beauty and artistry of the Asian world, pottery, jewelry, statues, manuscripts, among other remnants of great civilizations which were born in a land known as Persia. The exhibition, which has been dubbed as the fruit of the Iranian government's cultural diplomacy, opened on August 28th and will welcome art lovers and history fans from across the world until September 22nd.
The task of returning historical and cultural property started many years ago in the Ministry of Cultural Heritage. In fact, it all began after the victory of the Islamic Revolution. In the 1990s, we had the first restitution of historical and cultural property in the country. It was a piece of ancient tombstone that belonged to the Khorasan region and had been illegally taken out of the country and transported to the UK. The stone was confiscated in London, and in the 1990s it was returned to the homeland as the first retrieved piece. This case was the starting point for the restitution of historical and cultural property. There are many restitution cases, and we hope that they will be resolved as soon as possible.
To see the exhibition, we headed for the National Museum of Iran. The building invites its visitors to get a look at the country's rich history and great cultural heritage, manifested in awe-inspiring objects. The National Museum is a treasure trove of Asian artifacts, relics of the land's golden past from prehistoric times to the Islamic era. Yet it itself yearns for artifacts stolen from this land since the first group of Europeans turned up as archaeologists and Orientalists to unearth the splendor of Iran with their shovels and pickaxes, and to systematically loot the cultural heritage of this land.
In any case, the wish of every museum is to keep works of its own country, and we hope that one day in the world we will reach this understanding that the works of every country will be displayed in the museums of the same country, and God willing, we will not hear anything about smuggling again. The Ministry of Cultural Heritage has undertaken several big repatriation projects. Legal works have been done, some of which have been concluded, and some others are being pursued. We are constantly monitoring those national artifacts which are outside the country. We have good news about their repatriation, and we will announce it in due time.
The recently retrieved artifacts include valuable pieces, outstanding among them a stone relief from the Sassanid Empire. The Persian imperial dynasty that ruled over a large part of the world from 224 to 651 AD. The Sassanid soldier bas-relief was illegally taken out of Iran 35 years ago. It was confiscated in England in 2016 and returned to Iran in July this year, after it was on show at the British Museum for 3 months.
In the National Museum, we have an exhibition of some returned items during the Raisi administration. In 2016, a unique bas-relief work belonging to the Sassanid era was seized by the police at the London airport. And then the matter was brought to the notice of the British Museum, and in return, the British Museum announced it to the National Museum of Iran. We told them that the work was of Iranian origin and had to be returned to Iran. From 2016 to 2019, the person who was in possession of the work did not agree and claimed ownership. But in 2019, he agreed, and because it coincided with the coronavirus epidemic, the process of transferring the work was stopped. In any case, this work entered the National Museum of Iran this summer. Before that, the object was displayed in the British National Museum in coordination with the General Directorate of Museums and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
The soldier was carved almost 2,000 years ago and was expected to fetch more than £30 million had it come under the hammer. It was heading for the black market in Britain when it was seized at Stansted Airport. Over 1 meter in height, the carved soldier had been hacked out of living rock. In the words of Dr. St. John Simpson, a senior curator and archaeologist in the British Museum's Department of the Middle East, we almost never come across a case of something being cut out of living rock. That's a level of brutalism that surpasses anything. The case has been investigated by Interpol and the UK National Crime Agency, but no arrests have been made so far, although the packaging stipulated the sender, recipient, and destination, a UK internet auction site which said that it was not expecting it. The Sassanid soldier can count himself among the luckiest. Although not in a good shape, he finally came back to his ancestral homeland. That's while there are over 20,000 pieces of artifacts stored in museums abroad. To lend glory to Western museums an aesthetic, though illegal, and pleasure to private collectors across the world.
You see, we have a problem in relation to historical and cultural property. Unfortunately, the objects you see today in international auctions, such as Christie's, or in online auctions across Europe and America, a great deal of them have been in people's possession and are considered as permitted cultural and historical objects. By permitted, I mean people are allowed to own them inside the country, or if they intend to trade them, they can buy and sell them only inside the country. Usually, such works have been inherited in a family from one generation to another. Works such as manuscripts, paintings, artifacts dating back to the Safavid era, and the like. Unfortunately, some of these works have been taken out of the country illegally. Besides this, we are faced with yet another problem: illegal excavation in ancient sites. Most objects that end up in auctions in foreign countries are as a result of these unauthorized excavations carried out by unauthorized entities.
With imperialism at large, the cultural heritage of the Iranian nation fell into the wrong hands. Excavation projects undertaken by European and American dealers and smugglers who presented themselves as archaeologists were no more than a systematic plunder in broad daylight. The white man's real burden was not to make other nations civilized, but to steal their civilizations. Iranian artifacts can be found in the museums of France, the United Kingdom, the United States, Germany, and many other countries.
After
the Second World War and the looting of historical and cultural collections, ICOM, or the International Council of Museums, was formed in 1946. It was an institution to preserve museums, collections, and whatever is considered as cultural heritage. Gradually, various laws were passed. One of the most important is the 1954 Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property. It says that responsible organizations such as the Ministry of Cultural Heritage in Iran should train the armed forces the importance and value of cultural heritage in peacetime so that these works would not be destroyed in wartime.
The transfer of Iranian antiques to France took place mostly during the reign of Nasser-ed-Din Shah from the mid to later 19th century. The French government was given rights to conduct excavations at various historical sites in Iran. However, these excavations led to a huge-scale transfer of historically valuable Iranian artifacts to France and other European countries. The first French excavation that took place in 1885 and 1886 under the supervision of a French archaeologist, Marcel Delafoy, resulted in the plundering of important Iranian artifacts that were found during the excavations.
These objects have found their way into the world's great museums and private collections, at least from the Qajar period onwards. Some of them have gone legally, others have been donated and purchased or else smuggled. Therefore, there have been both legal and illegal ways through which these objects were taken out. At one point in our country's history, we had a law that allowed foreigners to explore through the country and possess discovered objects. On the other hand, some of the objects were illegally smuggled over the past centuries.
For smooth transportation, the bigger artifacts were broken down into small fragments, transferred to Paris, and reassembled in the Louvre Museum for display. Madame Delafoy, Marcel's wife and a fellow archaeologist, recounts in her book Memoirs of the Excavations of Susa how she managed to bring Iranian antiques to France through trickery. Yesterday, I was watching with regret the largest stone bull that was recently discovered. It weighs about 12,000 kilograms. It is impossible to move such a massive object. Finally, I couldn't control my anger. I took a hammer and started hitting the stone bull. As a result of my violent blows, the column split like a ripe fruit.
The important point is that these museums can be visited by millions of people in the world, whether in person or online, and cultures are introduced in this way. What is painful is that these historical and cultural works fall into the hands of collectors and antique dealers who buy and sell for profit, and in this case, these works should be subject to restitution.
The Louvre Museum is a remarkable display of Persian arts and artifacts from ancient Persia all the way to the Islamic era. From the Code of Hammurabi, which displays Babylonian laws, to other works from the archaic period, like the Persian archers of Darius I. The Persian section of the museum has on display rare objects from Persepolis, the capital of the Achaemenid Empire. At the same time, the French museum is a bitter reminder of Western colonialism, eviscerating nations' historical and cultural wealth.
There are many works, I'm an archaeologist by career, and I can't say which work is the most famous work. They all have their own unique character, and they have their own identity. There are many prominent works from Iran in the world's major museums. In any case, in my opinion, all of the Iranian objects in the Louvre are unique, all of them. All the works that are in the State Hermitage Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the British Museum and other great museums, they're unique. Our heritage and cultural works are among the best in the world. Their artistic quality in terms of their production technique, themes, and historical contents are really special compared to many other objects. I'm not talking from an Iranian point of view. Our place in the world heritage is clear.
Across the pond in the UK, the Cylinder of Cyrus, which is regarded as the first charter of human rights, is currently in the possession of the British Museum. The Oxus Treasure, a collection of about 180 surviving pieces of metalwork in gold and silver and around 200 coins from the Archimedean period, is on show in the British Museum. The museum is reported to have the most valuable collections of Persian art in the world.
Look at these Iranian works that are now on display in some museums such as the Louvre and the British Museum. Unfortunately, they were taken out of the country when these countries explored the ancient sites of Iran based on a series of contracts that they had signed with the governments of the time. According to those exploitative contracts, historical objects were transferred out of the country. Well, if we want to get into this issue now, the British Museum, the Louvre, and similar museums will claim that they took them out of Iran based on those contracts. They raise this legal point and make our job difficult.
Various museums across the United States, like the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, have also Asian Persian artifacts for display. The various historical relics can be seen in these museums, including prehistoric clay bowls, jugs, to objects belonging to bygone Persian empires, to engraved coins dating back 3,500 years, manuscripts of rare books, and more. In his 2003 book, The Great American Plunder of Persia's Antiques 1925-1941, Dr. Mohammad Qoli Majd explains how the U.S. government helped American museums to systematically plunder Iranian antiques. The book declassifies U.S. State Department records and other available sources to document this illegal process.
Regarding our cuneiform clay tablets at the University of Chicago, there are actually works that this university borrowed from Iran for a study, and the university is obliged to return them to us. At that point, the university was to read those tablets, carry out related studies, and then bring them back to Iran. Some of the works were returned to the country before the Islamic Revolution in 1979, and some of them after the revolution. But they later made false accusations against Iran, and therefore stopped returning the rest until a few years ago, when the U.S. Supreme Court of Justice issued a ruling in favor of Iran, saying that the issue of cultural heritage cannot be the subject of personal lawsuits. And now the rest of these works are returning to Iran, but the exact time will be determined later.
An intricately tiled mihrab or altar stolen from the Mir Emad Mosque in Kashan is presently on display at the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. Many other Persian artifacts discovered at the Apadana Palace excavation site can also be seen in the German museum. Even the Israel Museum in occupied Al-Quds houses a collection of Iranian antiques belonging to different historical periods. In short, almost all museums across the globe feature Asian Iranian artifacts without having the possession right.
We should keep this point in mind, that most of these objects that are kept in world museums today unfortunately were taken out of Iran at a time when we did not have any list of them. They were not registered as our national heritage and property, so reclaiming them is almost a heavy and difficult task from a legal point of view. In the first stage, we should focus mostly on removing from auctions the works illegally taken out of the country, and we should make these auctions unsafe for smugglers of historical and cultural property, so as they will be less able to exhibit and sell Iranian works in these auctions.
In December 2021, the United Nations General Assembly unanimously adopted a resolution titled Return or Restitution of Cultural Property to the Countries of Origin. The resolution recognizes that no region of the world remains unaffected by illicit traffic in cultural objects and that unprecedented attacks are being carried out against cultural property in the Middle East and elsewhere. The resolution, however, fails to call the return or restitution of cultural property smuggled before 1970. It means that the majority of Iranian artifacts stolen or smuggled out of the country can still remain in Western museums.
We abide by the UN return resolution, but the resolution unfortunately is not retroactive to before the year 1979. Regarding the collection that exists in the Louvre, the Iranian government at the time had a contract with France to give the French the monopoly of archaeological excavations in Iran. And that collection is the result of that agreement and was transferred there from Iran. Also, unfortunately, the government of Iran at that time did not recognize the value of pottery works, and the only thing that was important to them was gold and silver works. Sad to say, they are old contracts that have been closed.
Last but not least, a great number of antiques were taken away from Iran by the Pahlavi dynasty. On the eve of the victory of the Islamic Revolution in 1979, the writing on the wall for the Pahlavis, Mohammad Reza Shah fled from the country, knowing that there would be no point of return for him and his family. There are reports that before leaving Iran, the Pahlavi family took with them some of the cultural historical collections of artifacts belonging to the Iranian nation.
The list of the historical objects kept in the Pahlavi palaces was prepared by the Ministry of Court and was in the possession of the Ministry of Court itself. This information was definitely not provided to the Ministry of Economy and Property at that time. Unfortunately, we do not have any information about the properties in the Pahlavi palaces, so we cannot check the inventory of the palace today and see what is there and what is not there. But some members of the Pahlavi family, such as Shahram Pahlavi, were collectors and collected historical and cultural artifacts. And according to the limited information we have, Shahram Pahlavi himself took part of these historical and cultural artifacts out of the country and transferred them to France.
Over the past couple of years, Iran has put in a great deal of effort to recover its cultural heritage. The Iranian historical and archaeological artifacts are not merely masterpieces on display at world museums, but stolen remnants of the land's soul. They're not merely Asian items, but an essential part of the Iranians' collective memory and identity. Their repatriation is Iran's undeniable right.